Dr. Leonor Carvalho, welcome to the show. It's a pleasure having you today. Do you think burnout is an actual crisis of identity more than a problem of overwork?
Very interesting question. Um, it's not only not sure it's completely a crisis of identity, but it will lead you to have a crisis of identity most likely. And it's not. It's a multidimensional thing. It's not about overwork, burnout.
Hmm.
Overwork is just one small component of it. It it's about uh, many things, including your identity.
Before we start getting into the overwork, how does the identity play a role in burnout?
So there is one thing that I found very common in my clients, and also I've read some research, is that when you over identify yourself with work, when you are when your sense of worth, your sense of identity comes from work only. So what happens? You cannot lose your sense of identity. So that will motivate you to keep on pushing, to work a lot, to never to not take breaks, to feel guilty when you take breaks. So that's
Hmm. I think, is that sort of identity, where does it come from? I mean, if I think of myself, for example, I'm from Mexico. Part of my life, I grew up in Mexico. Part of my other life, I grew up in the US. I can say I think a lot of the drive that I have, I was able to obtain from the American work culture, which I think we can all agree that their main motto is like work hard. But has that shift of hard work mentality, has it made its way on to this side of the world?
mm, it depends a bit on the country. I haven't seen that so much in Finland,
Mhm.
but there are some other countries in Europe, in particular Southern Europe, that
Mhm.
I see this thing of work being the main focus. So kind of work comes first, family comes second. But then again, if I just base it on my clients, on the cases I have, is that there is a shift of values when we are burned out. And we tend to focus more on work. Work becomes irreplaceable, while family and everything else is, we don't have time for that in a way. But yes, I see in Finland things are much more balanced in that way.
Yeah, and that it's definitely something that I have noticed as well. I think I've been in Finland now for 5 years, and before that, I had never heard of the term work life balance. So that's one that I would like to get into later on during the episode. But just to kind of have an understanding of what is considered then burnout. I mean, if the scenarios that you're placing where Finland has, well, pretty kind of chilled atmosphere in terms of identifying with that thing that you do as a job, whereas your identity as a human being. Have you seen, what has been some of the findings that you have seen in terms of burnout here in Finland?
I don't have a lot of experience with Finnish clients.
Yeah.
I work mainly international. Uh, but one thing that I've noticed here in Finland is that I don't know, don't know if it's perfectionism. I think it might be like some level of perfectionism that, and that people are too harsh on themselves if they do something wrong, if they fail, or if, like, for example, they are very focused on doing it right instead of
Hmm.
enjoying at the moment, let it be for a dance or something like that. So people like, and then they beat themselves up if something fails. So that's the main thing that I found here in Finland that might be a contributor to burnout, is this beating themselves up and the perfectionism.
What about from the international context, from the other clients that you have? What do you see there?
A range of things. Clients from US, this hustling culture. Um, Then like entrepreneurs as well, especially solopreneurs, the fact that they have to use many hats and they cannot switch off, and then they feel guilty if they are not doing anything. So, and also there are some traits that I see, and that is perfectionism, people pleasing, and overachieving. So these are the three main traits I see in people, in my clients, that kind of are one of the main causes besides the workload and other things, but that leads them to be on this endless search and not being able to switch off.
Uh, If I think of personal experience, uh, I'm not sure yet whether I have experienced burnout, or maybe it's something that I'm not paying attention to, which is, I suppose, from your practice, that's something that, are you able to identify from talking to your clients that, hey, this guy is actually burning out without him even noticing? What are some of the invisible signs of a person starting to go into the burnout phase, for example?
So we have normalized feeling bad, that feeling stressed and having headaches and having body tension. So these are the early signs. So burnout is not a mental health problem, is a stress problem. It can develop into mental health, but at first is a stress problem. And stress is physical. So you're going to start getting some physical symptoms like stress, feeling tension, more headaches. You get sick more often. Very often people say like, they had this flu that started in September and ended in December. So kind of your immune system starts not to reply so well. So then there are these physical symptoms, and also digestive issues, like if you never had them before, and then you start to have like reflux or issues in the digestive system. And then there is this inability to disconnect from work. It's kind of you're addicted to work. You
Hmm.
cannot switch off. You need to be working. You need to be on all the time. And also that you don't have time for anything else. Things that you liked, yeah, like you have to work, you have things to do, so you cannot do your hobbies. You cannot, like, you cannot, you skip lunch, for example, to work, or you eat like quickly in front of the computer because you are obsessed with it. There is some kind of an addiction to work. And burnout, it's a range. So, like, you can be just a tiny bit burnout, or you can be severely burnout that you cannot do anything, that you just collapse.
From the burnout standpoint, let's say within an organization, from the work that you have seen, or from the work that you have done, how much of the burnout do you see is self-inflicted, and how much of it do you see that is simply just overload of work by the organization? Because I think those are two very interesting points to sometimes take into consideration. I mean, from the conversations that I have sometimes with people, uh, and they tell me, like, that they may be burning out or whatever it might be, and it could be either one thing. I mean, it could really be overwork, or simply it could be just the fact that maybe there's a lack of organization within their own priorities, within the work time that they have, where they're not using the resources appropriately, and maybe there's a little, like, a waste of time or whatever it might be. So how can you differentiate when it's really work burnout versus simply just not falling into a good pattern to do your work in the most efficient way?
I think it's not in a way that black and white,
Yeah.
because if you have a lot of work, if you're not efficient, plus the things that you do to yourself, the way you cause yourself, which by the way are like yourself is the only thing you can control.
Yeah.
If you have these two things together, recipe for disaster. If you have just overwork, but you yourself kind of have let's call it strong foundation. I don't really know how to, to put it this way. You are less likely to burn out. Because you deal things in a different way. That's why sometimes you can see people that have similar workload, similar positions. One burns out, the other no. Because that plays a role. Like the stories you tell yourself, imagine like you have already this big stress from work, and then you put another layer of stress on top of it that you cause yourself.
Hmm.
So I think it's more of a combination of both. But one of the things that I've noticed is that, for example, stress first is contagious. So, like, if there is someone highly stressed in your team or in your that you work nearby, chances are it's going to go for you as well, especially if that person is in a leadership position.
Hmm.
If you have a burned out leader, when you are burned out, you tend to lash out more often. uh, you don't have so much emotional control, and you tend to, for example, blame others or just lash out at them. Then chances, if you are working under a person like that, chances that you burn out are very likely, because that can cause also the environment to become toxic.
Mm. How do you work with those people that are experiencing that type of leadership?
I've worked more with the leaders,
Okay.
which is good because they are like aware enough that they understand that something is wrong. They see their
Hmm.
leadership style change, and they see that they are more on edge, like lashing out at employees for like small things.
Hmm.
But with that kind of but with the employee, because in that position you feel powerless. So it's kind of, you need to like work on yourself to also to process the stress that you're going through, to do something every day to process the stress, to build a strong foundation, inner foundation for yourself, and also to to set some boundaries. Because what I've learned, and I think this is one of the things that I see a bit different in Finland and in other countries, is that because in other countries, kind of the boss is up there and you are down here, people don't speak up. They just take it. You cannot
Hmm.
speak up. And in Finland, this situation, I see it a bit more balanced. I see that you have more support from HR, and you can actually do something about it, set some boundaries there, talk with HR. So that is also a cultural difference.
Yeah. I'm just, I think you touched something very interesting in terms of the leadership. From the leaders that you have talked to, or from the leadership roles that you have sort of spent time with, does that, does arriving to the burnout as in a leadership position sort of contradict the role itself? I mean, in essence, if you're a leader, kind of expected to kind of have all of your ducks in a row in order for you to be able to lead a team. I mean, have you ever had leaders sort of question themselves as to wondering, am I really then the right leader to lead this team if if I'm not able to deal with these kinds of things?
So when you start climbing, there is another thing that comes with it, which is called imposter syndrome. So, imposter syndrome is, I find it very common. Kind of, what am I doing here? Like, what if they find out I have no idea what I'm doing? I don't know why I got here. So, there is that. And plus, I tend to, this is my personal experience with working with leaders, is that they're also high achievers. And as a high achiever, you're going to have hard times to rest. You're going to be more time like focus on work. Like you have more of what is called the productivity guilt. That if you're not doing something productive, if you're not working or then you feel guilty. So you tend to like overwork yourself. And plus the responsibilities, all the demands. So that also is a cocktail for disaster. Although I found that leaders have better skills at time management, project management, all of these things. But then there is this other part, this more unconscious part that they are not aware of so much, that leads them to overwork themselves and to have certain attitudes that sometimes they are ashamed of. That's why they search for help.
What are some of those attitudes that they feel ashamed of?
Well, lashing out at employees, for example. That's very common, and that's like one of the things that why they come and search for help. Just like I still remember, like some client I had some time ago that she's like always been chilled. Like she was the founder CEO of a company, of a tech company, and all of a sudden she found herself just lashing out for stupid things, like being very nasty. And then okay, something is not right here. This is not. I don't recognize myself. Like this is not who I am. And then yes, she came in search for help.
What about the other side? Have you noticed sort of a shift towards the overuse of the word burnout, for example?
Yes. It's kind
How
of
does
a
that look?
buzzword. Everything I'm burned
Yeah,
out. Every
yeah.
like I'm burned out. Like I don't know. I had one stressful day at work. I'm burned out. No, it's like burnout. It doesn't go away with a good night of sleep. It's not just being tired. It's much deeper than that.
What is the main confusion between just being tired and being burnout? It's sort of like going into the being sad versus depressed. It seems that a lot of people confuse those two sometimes. Whereas, being sad, it's a natural feeling sometimes. Whereas being tired, it's also a natural feeling if you're doing all kinds of things every day. But then really understanding, and I guess that's kind of where I'm trying to land. You know, what is the exact feeling of burnout? Like I said, I think most likely in my professional career during my life, I have been burned out a couple of times. But yet, while I was preparing for this conversation, I was trying to look back into different instances where I was trying to think, was I ever really burnt out? And I don't know, to be honest, I don't know. I mean, I've been used to working, before I came to Finland, the previous jobs that I had in Mexican companies, it was, 12 to 14-hour day, work shifts. And I just kind of saw it as part of the grind, part of the grit. Of course, whenever you have different responsibilities, whereas maybe that would be a little bit more difficult for somebody that would have family. Whereas for somebody that doesn't have the same level of responsibilities as somebody that has a family. So there's a lot less things that you kind of have to worry about during your work shift. If it's just you taking care of yourself, then I guess in my case, I kind of found it that I was able to push pretty hard for those days. But then eventually there was days or there was sort of seasons whenever I could just really chill and not really think about work. So how can one how can one not fall into the burnout buzz or word or buzzword, if you want to call it that, whatever it may be, and simply just be tired? Simply maybe you just need one day of a break. So how can how can we identify those things? How can we separate one from the other?
So if you take a break, you still feel tired afterwards. That's already a sign. Because tiredness, you need to rest. Burnout, tiredness, exhaustion doesn't go away after resting. Even if you sleep, you will still wake up very tired. And and this happens day after day. And then you feel kind of cynical. You feel emotionally drained as well. It's like you feel mentally, physical, and emotionally drained. It's not only like that you're tired. Is imagine that you have a battery and your battery is completely out. So that it like you don't have it in you. Everything is hard. But of course, this is already, when you get to that state, you're already in a deep burnout. So there are like different levels. It starts it starts with this obsession, with this need to prove yourself somehow, which will lead you to focus only on work, and like in work and work, and everything else in your life takes a step back. But here you still don't feel tired, you just feel stressed. Um, but you're already entering the first stages of burnout. And then from this state of work, like your life becomes, everything becomes about work. Everything else is like secondary. So work is the main focus of your life. And you get a change of values, like you change as a person a bit, like you don't do things you enjoy, you avoid other people, you blame other things for feeling bad. So these things, they evolve and it builds up on top of the other. So for example, using your case that you think that you might have been burnout, maybe you were in an earlier stage of burnout, but because you were able to do something about it or chill for a while before it progressed, you were able to avoid evolving into a worse situation, when actually the symptoms, they feel like depression, where you don't have energy, where you isolate yourself, you feel hopeless, you feel a void. So what happens is that a lot of people, they spend years and years chronically stuck in a lower level of burnout. That's why they have all kind of physical problems, tension, headaches, they get sick all the time, because they're crystallized in this stage, and this is called habitual burnout. Is like when you're chronically burned out and you don't even realize, because you think this is normal. Because in a way, like, we have normalizing feeling bad, and this is like the price that you pay for success. But this is not normal to feel bad all the time.
Yeah, definitely. I wonder from that burnout, how much is I'm trying to think from, for example, from an organizational point of view or stance, what is the role of an organization in terms of ensuring that the workers don't get burned out? So, does the workplace have a deep responsibility in ensuring that the employees don't get burned out from the work, but sometimes they can get sort of mixed with, I don't know, maybe the person simply has some things in his or her personal life that is sort of carrying on onto the work. So then perhaps things are not getting done, things are being postponed for later and later, and then eventually the workload sort of accumulates over time to a point where that person is not able to get the work done. And then there comes the burnout. So whenever you work with companies, I think that's a very sensitive topic, right? What what is the company's role in terms of identifying whether it's workload burnout versus simply it's a person?
I think companies first, they should, and especially people like managers and HR, they should be very aware of the burnout signs, like these little hints, like employee productivity levels decreasing, getting sick more often. They should be aware of this, or complaints that sometimes employees might have, like, oh, like I have headache all the time, or this is overwhelming, and I've been feeling more stressed. Like, they should be very aware of this. And then also, it's part of the employee to also be aware of it, so that they can communicate, so that they, for example, can ask to readjust their roles, or to to have some days off. But in terms of company, I think they can. There is only until a certain point that they can do, like readjusting the roles, the workload, if needed, and giving some autonomy, because this is something that is a burnout protector. When you have more autonomy, if you have an helicopter boss that is all over you all the time and you feel powerless, like, you're more likely to burn out, because you feel you have no agency over what you do, over your time. So this is like, it's important. But I think more important in terms of burnout prevention is for each one of us to be aware of the signs, to not ignore the signs, to know it, so that we can act. Because here the secret is really to act before it's too late. Because
Mhm.
in average, it can take up to 2 years for you to feel like yourself again when you burn out, especially if you burn out severely. And if you burned out once, chances are you're going to burn out over and over again. So it's really prevention, the secret. To invest in burnout prevention.
Mm. So then, in essence, is burnout something that happens? You have, let's say, you have the early symptoms, and then eventually you arrive at the burnout stage. From what I'm understanding, is that the burnout stage is not something that is just in a couple of days or a couple of weeks. It could be something that just you're in burnout in years, perhaps, right? That's interesting. So, whenever you go and work with leaders, whenever you go and work with companies and your clients, is it also part of your responsibility to sort of differentiate those two? To sort of say, okay, these are the things that maybe from the organizational point, it's simply just work overload, versus these are some of the things that maybe do you suggest people, hey, I think for these other components, maybe you should seek help, or how does that work whenever you're working with your clients?
It's yes, like it's good to identify, like, but of course there are things that I cannot share, like with companies and everything, if it's on the client level, because they are personal. And I mainly work one-on-one in companies. I do trainings on burnout awareness and prevention, and I work one-on-one either with leaders or employees and entrepreneurs. But in terms of like thing, I think yes, like sometimes like what happens is that also the overwork, when we are overloaded with tasks, very often it's, let's say, individual fault, because we accumulate a lot of things. We are not efficient with our time. We don't know how to move the needle forward. We spend a lot of times busy being busy instead of being busy being productive. And there is a big difference there. And so, like, I help clients to tick things from their task list. And this helps a lot with decreasing the workload and then feeling that feeling of accomplishment in the end of the day. Because what happens if you don't tick things from your task list, in the end of the day, they will drag and you feel that you cannot switch off. And then you enter in this loop like, I need to be on all the time, I need to finish this, and it never ends. So it's very important to get closure of some things.
Yeah, I think the productivity phenomena is something that I've also been trying to dissect and sort of like truly understand. And I was reading this article, I forget the name who it was, but it's super interesting, where they were asking people to define what is productivity. And it kind of came out that everybody was sort of describing their job role. So in this modern era, is burnout connected to not fully understanding what productivity actually means? Because if we think about it from, let's say, from the industrial revolution, in a way you were able to measure productivity, right? By how much you can produce within the given amount of time, and that's how you measure productivity, right? And a lot of the works were sort of very isolated. What I mean by that, it was just one particular task. If your job was to change tires, you were just changing tires. So, like, how many tires can you change during your work shift, right? Whereas now, in the, I guess, knowledge work, you have a bunch of different roles. Now, whenever you go into a job, let's say if you're going to be a marketing specialist, you're not just going to be placing ads, but most likely you're going to be running campaigns, editing videos, editing pictures, handling the emails, handling the outreach to the clients, doing research, and all these things. So, can you tell me a little bit about what are the things that maybe we don't understand about what really productivity is, that perhaps could be leading people into the wrong patterns or behaviors that leads him into burnout?
First, we need to understand the difference between productivity and being busy. Because most of us think that we are being productive when we're being busy all the time. No. So, productivity, you actually see results. Like you can check things from your task list. If you're doing things, if you are putting time and energy into doing something that will help you move forward. But if you're spending most of your time busy doing meaningless things that will not help you to get any closure, that will not help you move forward, you're not really being productive. You're just busy being busy. So the thing is, like, you need to check the things that are really important and urgent that need to be done and that will help you move forward instead of like spending a lot of time in your email or scrolling on social media or doing research, whatever.
Yeah, research. Yeah. I wonder what have been some of the components that have led for people falling into those kinds of patterns. I mean, if I think of, for example, I mean, and this is just from my personal experience, if I think of university education, they teach you all these concepts, but they don't really teach you about time management or actually understanding what really productivity is. And let's say, I mean, somebody pursues an education in marketing or business administration, and then they're super excited and pumped going into the work life, into the work market, and they land in this company and they're given all these kinds of tasks. And I think many could feel, I like to believe that maybe some people can feel sort of isolated in a way that the things that they were learning don't necessarily match with the kind of task that they should be doing for work. So, do the organizations have certain responsibility into perhaps teaching those kinds of skills if they are skills? I mean, is it a skill to actually learn how to be productive and understand what the job is?
Yes, it's a skill, it's something that you can develop, and I do agree that university, it doesn't really prepare you for
Mm.
life, in like for working life. For it doesn't teach you, for example, about any productivity, about like even emotional intelligence or emotional control. It doesn't teach you any of that, and those are things that are important for work life.
What do you think that is?
I think I think it's because kind of they are teaching us to follow the herd
Mm.
and teaching us certain skills might not make us follow the herd.
Mm. Yeah, that's something that I have noticed as well. And, you know, I did this talk at a university a couple of weeks ago, and we are talking about sales and other skills. After the lecture, I was approached by a few students sort of asking advice or sort of what things they could focus on. And, well, I don't know. I was a bit discouraged in a way because I thought, well, a lot of these people they're coming to the universities with very high hopes of that they could become really something and somebody that would fully prepare them into the work life. But sadly, it's not. I wonder what is our responsibility as, I don't know, educators or coach to help maybe better prepare people. I mean, what could be a solution that could better prepare young people, especially especially younger people? I mean, I think when I was in my 20s, I don't know, I had never heard anybody talk about burnout or say that I just can't do this or I just can't handle this. But it sort of seems that now the word burnout is thrown a lot more candidly without fully understanding those concepts what we're talking about, the productivity things. What could be some solutions that you think could work to start preventing those things? Because, I think part of the work that you're doing, I think it's amazing, right? but is it in a way of you're also working on preventing, but you're also treating the symptoms itself and the disease, if we want to call it that, right? But what could be some other preventive, like further preventive measures that could help people better cope with those kinds of things?
Think there is something missing in education, and I think it comes even before university. You can learn some of these things at university if you follow certain educational paths. I think we should learn about the human experience. We should learn about our emotions. We should learn about not believing our thoughts. We should learn
Mm,
about uh, like so many things, for example, that I learned when I took my coaching certification. I was just learning those. I was like, this should be everyone should know this because this will make life so much easier for everyone to know. For like just to know that like you shouldn't believe everything that you think. Most of it is to be thrown to the trash. But what happens? We believe in it. And
yeah,
and because of that, we make our life much harder than it has to be. We tell a lot of stories to ourselves. Like, also, like, we should learn communication, how to communicate with others. It's a skill as well. So, there are a lot of things missing. And I think having this, like, knowing this, helps you build a stronger foundation because this is the basic of life. You are there in all the experiences of your life. So, you also, like, you need to know this and you need to know yourself because these things will help you to know yourself. So when you have this stronger foundation, it's easier for you to take the challenges that life throws at you. And I think this is missing a lot, but in a way, perhaps it's not convenient for people to teach this to us because then we will not be so like manipulated or we will not follow the herd so much. And this is
yeah,
not what it's wanted, but I think this is really like what is missing.
yeah. I couldn't agree more. I think a lot of the education systems are built around creating factory workers, just people that will follow orders, right? I mean, essentially, that's what a degree sort of tells the employer, right? Okay, so this person completed a bachelor's in international business, so I can be sure that he can follow orders and he can complete a given task in a given time. That's pretty much it, right? But yeah, I mean, I do see that there isn't much critical thinking or well, some, and I think it also depends on the teacher. I mean, I did have some very good teachers and some other ones that I just kind of felt that they were just going through the motions and just sort of, teaching outdated tendencies or outdated practices for any given subject. To take it even farther, obviously, having these kinds of conversations, it's definitely always very helpful because then, you can talk to your peers, you can talk to your colleagues, you can talk to your friends and sort of collectively start making a shift. But I think it's also like a responsibility to us parents as well. I don't know if do you have kids?
Yes.
Yeah, I have two kids. So, now that I've been doing this podcasting thing and I've been getting the chance to talk to pretty incredible people, I think it's a pretty good tool for me to provide to my kids and also talk about these topics. And I think sadly, sometimes as parents leave everything in terms of education to the system or to the government, for example. We expect that they are going to create the best version of our kids when in reality, well, I just don't think they have the resources to do that.
No, and
And
in
it,
a way, like you said, they are teaching the education is to create factory workers. In a way, they also like kind of they have to mold them. They have to cut in a way their creativity sometimes to fit in the mold. So I think
yeah,
as parents, it's important that we actually get to know our children, get to real like know like who they are, not we think they are, and to let them explore I don't know, the things that come natural to them, not to cut their wings as well. And to teach them about, like, teach them emotional regulation. But you can only teach them if we are emotionally regulated ourselves. Otherwise, no, doesn't work like that.
yeah, yeah, that's
so,
true.
So it's like also like I think as parents we have that role and that responsibility.
Yeah. What about how much of comfort sort of blurs the waters between being productive, between finding your potential, and then sort of creating people that are very susceptible to burnout? This is what I mean. I mean, obviously, you know, I can help sometimes to make comparisons because obviously I come from a different culture. Uh, so I was sort of raised by baby boomers, even though I'm a millennial. So I kind of grew up, obviously, with a hard work mentality. But I think something that I have taken, maybe I didn't have the best childhood, but something that I can take away from it is that I think at a very young age, I was able to find what were the limits of my skills or my abilities. And I think that's something that has helped me sort of be resilient with workloads or doing pretty much any kind of work. And if I think of Finland, look, I think Finland is a great country. Don't get me wrong. And I think it offers amazing benefits, and the education from what I have seen to a certain level, I think is great. But at the same time, I try as well to sort of manage or balance excessive comfort where, well, sometimes you just kind of find out, what are your own limits. Like if we talk about the work life balance, for example, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but this is sort of my philosophy or my definition of work life balance. Like I don't see it as work life balance within a day, but rather I see it for seasons. There's seasons whenever I work a lot. There's seasons where I take it easy and I focus on the family more, and that has worked for me. But I'm also pretty resilient. I think there's a lot of things that are done on the back end that allow me to do these kinds of things. Like, well, you know, I don't drink alcohol. Like every once in a while, like I have a beer. I go to sleep pretty early. I eat relatively healthy. I exercise. So I think a lot of those things sort of allow me to be able to take on, well, maybe complicated things or maybe like a heavy workload. But I think sometimes people, that's what they lack. So, for example, like if you were to ask somebody, hey, can you run a marathon tomorrow? Most likely people will burn out within the first 5, 10 kilometers. But somebody that has been running on a daily basis, that task may not be as complicated. And that's kind of the way, well, it works for me. That's kind of how, like, the way that I see it. I see work, I see many things as I see sports. If you practice, if you train for it, the more you train, the more you practice, your threshold gets higher and higher and higher, right? And obviously, there's plenty of examples of leaders out there that you just kind of wonder, like, how do they accomplish all these things? I mean, obviously, like Elon Musk is an extreme example. I mean, I think it's fair to say that he's probably pretty burned out, but somehow he manages to operate, five multi-billion-dollar companies. But I wonder, from the things that you have learned from your practice, is there a correlation between your daily habits in relation to how much work you're able to sustain?
Yes, definitely. So what I see is that people tend to think short term, things that give them like instant gratification, instead of thinking long term and building habits that support them. For example, you do great going to sleep early, exercising, eating healthy, not drinking a lot of alcohol. That those are all great habits that support you because if you like drink alcohol often, it will like mess up with your organism. If you drink too much coffee, that will also mess up with your organism. If you don't sleep, for sure, you're more prone to burnout because that really messes up with your health, with your the way, with your emotional control, with how much stress you can handle. So it's about building habits. It's about like nurturing yourself every day. And in terms of work-life balance, I don't like the term work-life balance
Thank you.
because and if you think about like I became aware of how like the way words and how we talk to ourselves affect our life. So you have work and you have life, and they are fighting to each other with each other. If you think about work and life balance, so like you have two entities always fighting with each other, never going to be happy because like sometimes like you need to work, but then life you are missing on life. Sometimes you need more life and you're missing on work. So I would like to reframe that to life balance. Is life balance,
Mm.
and work is part of life. It's not a different thing than life. And if you say work life balance, if you like seeing work as a separate thing from your life, it kind of means that you don't really like what you do, that there is some kind of inner conflict, perhaps. So work is part of life, whether you like it or not. So you just need to organize life in a way that is benefiting you, that you like it supports you. Like some days you will put more to work, like you say, like it's by seasons, but sometimes it's more for family or for other things, and it's about balancing this. And if you're like always to work, like always putting time on work and forgetting about everything, you don't have life balance at all. It's just like work.
Yeah.
You don't have a life. And this is something I find in my clients that they don't have life. They only have work. And this is where the
Mm.
problem starts.
Do you think that's a coping mechanism for loneliness, for example?
Uh, can be, but also I see this in people uh, with families and that have other things, that have like social life, that have family, that have loved ones, that have kids. It can be a coping mechanism for something else that is not quite well inside, to fill the void. Because when we have a void inside of us, we will try to fill it with work, with alcohol, with binge eating, with being on the cell phone all the time. So it's not necessarily loneliness, but it's to fill some kind of inner void.
Mm. I wonder how much, I wonder what is, for example, the ratio of burnout from personal issues going on versus actually work.
I don't know the
Have you
rate
ever, no?
because, unfortunately, the World Health Organization classifies burnout as a work only problem, which is not. And the research done about burnout is mainly about work life. But by my experience, the work I do with clients is most of it is about developmental trauma.
Mm.
So it's this developmental trauma that will, or survival strategies, is to overcome survival strategies and limiting beliefs that we acquired when we were growing up somehow. These are the things that are going to lead us to become perfectionists, to become people pleasers, to become more prone to stress, and to become overachievers. And
Mm.
there is also a link between personality and your tendency to burn out, between your coping mechanisms and your tendency to burn out. This there is some research on it.
Mm. That's very interesting. How does people pleasing manifest in burnout in the workplace?
Well, you cannot say no. You just take everything to yourself, and you say yes to every request, even if you like, even if it means that you're not going to be able to finish your own things and to finish what is important to you. And you will like what happens is that you will end up resentful. You will end up not having time, and you will end up overwhelmed.
And I guess that translates into every aspect of life, right? Most likely.
Yes, wherever you go, there you are. So, like, if it happens at work, likely it will happen in other areas. Like, you are the same person.
Mm. Yeah. Do you ever have friends approach you and sort of throw you their work problems, given that you do
Yes,
this? Yeah.
yes, I have. I also need to put my boundaries there because it's not good to coach friends.
Okay, that's a good point. What are some healthy ways to set boundaries to avoid burnout?
Kind of, you need to like see if like start to think like, am I doing this for myself or for pleasing other people too, so that people like me? And you start asking yourself this kind of questions. And if you're doing this so that people will like you, or so that you can please other people and get into their good graces, and trying to fish for compliments or for praise, which never happens when you try to fish them, it backfires and you just end up feeling resentful. If you're doing those things because of that, then it's time to start, say, throwing some rows. It's going to be very uncomfortable in the beginning. So you should start small. Stick to one boundary, set one boundary and stick to it. You need to stick to it. Here is the issue. No means no. No, it's not maybe, but it's no. And you stick to
Mm.
it. And once you do
Yeah.
that, it becomes more comfortable and then you can increase. But you need to start small, because if you start setting boundaries all over, all of a sudden, chances are it will backfire and you will not stick to it.
Yeah, it's true. I wonder how much of a responsibility as well for leaders is to create a space where boundaries can be placed. Are those some of the things that you work as well with leaders?
Yes, like they need to be okay, comfortable, the leaders, to listen to other people's feedback, to other people, instead of being authoritarian,
Hmm.
to be a bit, to be open.
Mm. What has been your experience with burnout?
Well, I burned out 10 years ago the first time.
Tell me.
So I was doing a PhD and I was putting a lot on myself. And also I was doing a PhD in a field that it was different from my previous background. So I had a background in IT and I was doing a PhD in biochemistry. So I had a lot to learn. I had a lot of responsibilities. I had to do a lot of things. And that, together with some imposter syndrome and being an overachiever, that I wanted to achieve things, it was a cocktail for disaster. So, and I got to the point that I went on sick leave, and I remember like the first week, the only thing I had energy to do was to lay down in the couch and look at the ceiling of my apartment. I was
Wow.
completely, oh,
Okay. I'm glad I asked that question so I can sort of know if I ever get to that point, it's burnout.
please don't get to that point. Do
No, no, no.
something before it's that. It's
Yeah.
not pretty.
Yeah, I mean, I think, of course, now that I have kids, and it's also maybe about setting your priorities straight. Of course, you kind of learn this by making mistakes and making errors, right? So obviously, because I have a family now, uh, I do have to prioritize times and sort of create schedules as well to sort of say, okay, by the time I get home, computer goes away, phone goes away, it's kids and family time. So, well, of course, you kind of have to find out the hard way as well. Sometimes, you're so caught up in the work and in the moment and trying to, chase, you're caught up in the rat race. You forget about this thing until somebody sort of taps you on the shoulder. Hey, you gotta take it easy. You have a family here. So I think also that comes as well from the people that are surround you, that are around you, to also make notice, and maybe I think that can be quite helpful. You know, somebody to point out those things before you actually reach the burnout, because besides you hurting yourself, you can also, I mean, I suppose it also hurts other people and the people around you. How did you see that as well when you were having your burnout? How did it affect the people around you?
At that point, I didn't have kids yet. So it was just me and my partner. So in that, I was just detached. And I kind of isolated myself from friends. Like I didn't have energy to go meet people. I didn't have it in me. So in that way, it influences that you isolate yourself because you just don't have it in you. It's like the energy, everything is gone.
What about, is there any silver linings that somebody can get out of reaching burnout, for example? What
Yes.
have been some positive insights that you have discovered about yourself while going through burnout?
In a way, it's a wake-up call. So it's kind of a sign that you have been disconnected from yourself, that you perhaps have been living in autopilot, that kind of you have a lot of limiting beliefs and things you are doing that don't really fit you anymore. So you kind because you are pushing through it, you are like just putting this mask on yourself and keep on going. So burnout forces you to take the mask. If it's done right, in a way, the recovery. If you just don't kind of recover a bit and then go on the same cycle over and over again, so that you burn out again. So if you really want to recover from burnout and don't enter the burnout cycle, you really have to take this as a wake up call, as a way for you to work on yourself, to get to know who you really like, who you really are, what you really like. Um, Otherwise, you go back, like you take some time off, you might recover, and you go back with the same habits, with the same way of thinking, with the same everything. So it's a matter of time until everything is the same.
Hmm. Was it, in your case, had it become a part of your identity, all the things that you were doing?
It's like, yes, yes. Kind of, I was a PhD student, I was a researcher, I was like going to accomplish things, whatever. So like I was deriving my value out of that because, and I know now why it was, because I was raised in a way that you need to have a university degree. You need to go to university. You just like, it doesn't matter if you like it or not, you need to have that degree. So I approach my whole beginning of my career and everything based, not really based what I like, because I didn't really know at that point what I like, but based on what I could get a job from, I could get successful from. And it took me a PhD and a few more years to really understand what I wanted, what I really liked. That's why like I completely shift what I am doing.
You mentioned earlier that obviously, once you go through the steps of recovery, then you're able to look back and see, the place where you were. Can you walk us through what are the steps for a recovering burnout person?
First, you need to deal with the stress, and the stress is physical. So you cannot deal with the stressor, so the things around you, until kind of you have processed a bit the stress and you have calmed down a bit, because otherwise, like it's too overwhelming. And you need to get to know yourself. This is the most important thing. Is like a lot of the work I do is also self awareness. I make people question themselves, what they've been doing, the attitudes they've been having, the thoughts they're having, so that you can get to understand who you are. Because you are in every, like, you have to live with yourself 24/7 all your life. You cannot escape yourself. So you really need to know who you are, so that you don't get into, and you really need to know, like, what are the patterns and what are the limiting beliefs you have that are causing you to go on these loops of burnout. So it's a lot about, like, coming back home to yourself, like understand yourself and overcome all of these limitations.
Mm. How can somebody find the potential and limits in a healthy way without burning out?
To learn to listen to their body, because like if you're pushing through, if you're like going through going after things, and if you totally ignore the signs your body is giving you to, like, take it a bit slower now, like just for a few days, prioritize yourself a bit, and then you could go back to the grind. So learn to listen to your body. And most of us, we are disconnected from that because we think it's normal to feel bad, because we think success means suffering.
Yeah, I don't think that's the case. I mean, from some of the other conversations that I had with other people, it kind of seems to me that I guess there's this sort of belief that in order to be successful, there's no room for fun. But I think that's quite the contrary. I think it seems to me that the most successful people are the ones that know exactly the best ways to have fun.
Yeah,
Obviously, they don't show that because maybe that's not the sexy thing to show. You know, the sexy thing to show is how much you're working, how many clients you're taking, how many calls you're taking, how many hours you're working, how many times you did a cold plunge in the morning, and all your crazy morning routines, right? So, w- we both have kids. What kind of message, or how do you plan to raise your kids in a way so that they can also find their potential in whatever it is that they like without achieving burnout? How do you see that as from a parent perspective?
so going back to this, that so you cannot have fun if you're going to be successful.
Yeah.
There is one important thing here, that if you cannot have fun, if you cannot enjoy life, you're never going to enjoy success, because where is the limit?
Hmm.
You're going to always keep on chasing. So one of the things that I plan to teach my kids is to be grateful to what they already have, to enjoy what they already have, so that um, they can enjoy their success. They can see, like, because if you cannot enjoy it, if you cannot have fun, life becomes too serious. And this was my problem. So, like, I was living life in a serious way. Like, everything was too serious, too much responsibility, a burden, the weight of the world in my shoulders, because I could not appreciate what I had achieved. I could not enjoy to smell the roses. I had to be on a constant chase. So I think this is the key thing, is to help our kids to be grateful for and enjoy what they already have, so that they can, if they build something, it's because they really want it. It's not because of some external things.
Mm. Yeah, it's a very good it's a very good point and a good approach. Obviously, I like to ask these questions because I have kids myself, and I'm also wondering, like, at a certain point, how do I want to manage these kinds of conversations? But and at the same time, I'm hoping that I'm leaving the right foundations for them. And at the same time, you know, some things they just have to find out, on their own, right? We can't do everything for them. We can, educate them in a way so that they can maybe be critical thinkers, so that they can think in much better way than maybe we did when we were younger. Hopefully, right? But of course, they have to go through their trial and error and go through their uh, rite of passages as well. I'm wondering, from the work that you do, how much does social media exemplify the problem of burnout? If it exemplifies it or if it underplays it in a way as well?
Social media, like, first, I think it's because of social media that people are just throwing the burnout word
Mm.
like all over, because everything is like burnout, burnout. Social media has a problem that kind of people only show the good. So you go there, you see all these success stories, all these sexy things of working a lot, the cold plunges, the morning routine. And then uh, you kind of start beating yourself because you're not doing the same. And you don't even think that you have a different life than the other person. And like, just that, like, you live in a different country, or you have kids and the other person don't have. Like, I remember, for example, when my kids were very small, and I saw these magical morning routines all over. Wake up at 5, you do this, you journal, you meditate. And I was like, no. Like, I wake up at 5 because I have a baby crying that, not because I want. No, like, see your life situation at the moment and don't compare yourself. It's very hard, like, not to compare yourself. And so I think social media amplifies this problem.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think it just throws so many things at the same time that it's just impossible for people to actually be able to sustain in a healthy way. I mean, somebody might be listening to one influencer that has the perfect morning routine, and then another influencer that has the perfect productivity hack and productivity routine, and then the fitness guru that is doing ultra marathons, and then this person that is traveling all over the world doing all these things. So it kind of seems to me that sometimes people want to fit all those influencer identities into one persona, whereas it doesn't work that way. And I think it's helpful if you could sort of declutter yourself from all the things that you are actually not and focus on the things that you want to become. Like I said, like those morning routines, I was obviously, because I do podcasts, I do consume podcasts, and a lot of people also throw contradicting points of views and contradicting stories. And they were asking this one guy, so hey, what is, I mean, this highly successful guy, his name is Alex Hormozy. You may be familiar with him, but he's obviously very focused on productivity and, making money and all those things. And they ask him, so what is your morning routine? He's like, I get up and work. Why spend a bunch of time doing the thing to prepare you to do the thing when you can just wake up and do the thing? So he talks about, like, a lot of people sometimes reach burnout because they're emphasizing so much energy on external things, emphasizing energy on the preparing to doing the task instead of just using that energy to go into doing the task. Like, hey, I'm going to wake up, going to take a 15-minute walk to get sunlight, I'm going to do my smoothie and then do all these things. And then I'm going to go to the cafe, get my macchiato with a donut and with matcha and all these things. And they have already burned a bunch of energy, whereas that energy simply could have been just used towards being productive, right? So is that a lot of things that you see as well, that perhaps people sometimes maybe waste a lot of time putting energy into things that don't get them to the goal?
Yes, and on that, waking up and getting this sunshine, like, that's another pet peeve of mine. Like, I live in Finland in the winter. How am I supposed to get my 20 minutes of sunshine in the morning? Yeah, so like what I what I see is that there is this thing. I don't know if you heard about this shiny object syndrome.
Yeah.
So imagine you see all these shiny objects over social media, all these routines, and instead of you keeping to a actually routine that supports you, you keep on trying new things because this is the thing that is the game changer. It's going to change your life forever. So you try it and then it doesn't work and then you go again. Instead of like actually stopping a bit and thinking like, how can I actually optimize my time and energy? And think about in terms of energy, not only in terms of time, because when we think about productivity, we tend to focus a lot on time management, and we don't think about energy management. And that's the most important thing is like understand your energy levels. Like if you're most productive in the morning, perhaps like do start working instead of wasting a lot of time and energy with smoothies, walking, this and that. Just do the most hard thing that you have to do that day immediately. Then leave the smoothies for the evening. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. That is true. I think a lot of people sometimes, we fall in that chasing that shiny object thing, and we just chase one after the other, and never really stick to it because, like you mentioned before, we're just so focused on the short term that we forget about the long term. And everything that you see out there is everybody's looking for a life hack to accomplish life, to accomplish success, right? There's all this how to get rich scheme, how to get rich in 3 months, how to get 1 million followers in 6 weeks, how to do this in
Multiple six figures and while you're on
exactly.
vacation.
Exactly. So I'm guessing all that noise that people get sort of get cluttered. People get cluttered with all those things that when they have to turn back into the real world and see their daily life, maybe it's a bit disheartening or dissatisfying. They're looking at the work that they're doing. Maybe they're not fully satisfied. I suppose those are also contributors to burnout, right? Like you said, I mean, if you're not doing something that you love and you're doing something that you hate, most likely you're going to be burned out.
Yes, and that, and if you feel you have no control over your life, it's not only about working too much, but if you are doing something that you feel like your skills and that it gives you no sense of meaning, that also can contribute. But yes, we are just chasing outside things, external things, instead of like coming back to the basics and really try to understand ourselves, what works for us, what we want. So because it's uncomfortable. I'm not going to lie that it's very uncomfortable to look in the mirror. And most people do go to extreme extents not to not to have to to do that. But this is actually the real game changer. It's not in hacks, these productivity hacks, these quick fixes. That doesn't work. What works on the long term is to look in the mirror and to get to know who you are and what you like, like to optimize your life in a way that is tailor made for you.
Mm. How do you see this phenomenon playing out in the future? I mean, like we talked earlier, from the Industrial Revolution, there was like a big shift once we reached into the technological revolution where now people were just being hired to press buttons and, pull levers and whatnot. And then now we're like in this knowledge work area where everybody's sort of tuned into the computer, to the work. And as each change has manifested itself, it kind of comes with a new phenomena. We went from the working hard and grit days to now to the era of work-life balance and listen to your body, listen to yourself. How do you see this playing out in the future? What can it turn into if we don't if we don't take care of it? Is there something beyond?
Think like my biggest fear is the overuse of cell phones and social media.
Mhm.
Is that we cannot like we are not able to be bored anymore. We are constantly numbing ourselves with our phones on social media, distracting ourselves from reality, from our reality, try to live life through other people in a way. And this is what I see like uh what I fear the most is that we become so disconnected from ourselves that we're just not going to listen to ourselves anymore. And that like because this is something I see in clients a lot is that they take a break kind of to clear their head by going on social media. This is not how you do
Mm.
it. It just overwhelms you even more.
It overstimulates the brain, right?
Yes.
Something that I wanted to ask earlier, I mean, and this is obviously not to, throw stones at young people, but do you see a difference in young people versus the older generations as to how they get burnt out if?
I think young people are less resilient. They don't have uh, coping mechanisms so much for stress, for hardships. I don't know where it comes from. I don't know if it's because like parents were overprotective, like don't let them like make their own mistakes or like helicoptering all the time. I don't know if it's only that, but I think from what I see, it's they are like less resilient than older generations, and they don't know how to be bored. They need to be
Mhm,
distracted all the time. If I see
mhm.
like the generation of my parents or grandparents, they know how to be bored.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Same with mine. I mean, I remember my grandparents in the evenings just sitting outside, just sometimes not even talking, just sitting.
Yeah, like I like to do that nowadays, but it was very uncomfortable for me to learn how to be bored, how to do that, how to just sit without anything, or how to go for a walk without listening to music or a podcast or audiobook. I had to like it's like now it gives me a lot of peace of mind, but I could not do this and it was very uncomfortable because I was not optimizing my time. But this is the thing, we are just like we need to optimize our time. We need to like listen to podcasts, for example, while we do cleaning the house or while we go for a walk or watching two videos while we are eating. Like everything is like optimized. The time needs to be optimized like that, we are just overstimulating ourselves. We are never having a break. Our mind is always on. And this is also part of the knowledge work because our work instrument is us all the time. We
Mm.
cannot switch off. And if you are like on top of the work, putting all kind of mental stimulation, it's like recipe for disaster.
Yeah, that's 100% true. Like that's one area that I've been working on for a while now. The like the art of just being. Yeah. And it is I mean, and it is uncomfortable because, you know, like when I messaged you, like something that I wanted to understand is, like how is it that sometimes some of us just don't have an off button? Uh, a couple of days ago, my wife was away on business, and my kids had spent the night at their grandparents, so I had the house all by myself. And it was the weirdest thing ever. It was quiet, and I wasn't doing any work, but yet it was just very uncomfortable. It was very uncomfortable in a way, feeling that I wasn't accomplishing something. And because of my background, a lot of the foundations I got them from sports, playing football in the US. So it's always about working hard to achieve something. But then the art of being, that's the one that I haven't yet mastered yet, but I'm working on. I went to the hot tub for like 15 minutes without cell phone, and it's just weird though. It's very weird. But I think it's just something that takes practice, right?
Yes, it's very uncomfortable in the beginning, but the more you do it, the better it becomes. We are not used to it anymore. We have like our phones all the time with us. Like every time we are bored, we go there. Like we cannot wait in a queue without looking at our phones. There is this itchy that like we need to go there. Like, and I just if it's not the phone, then we need to be listening to something all the time. We
Yeah.
cannot
Yeah.
just be. We cannot just
Yeah.
be. We cannot just wait for the bus without having our headsets on or looking at the phone or scrolling. We cannot. Like, we need to be numbing ourselves all the time.
Yeah, it's true. And sometimes I think we confuse knowledge acquisition versus numbing ourselves, right?
We use knowledge acquisition as an excuse to numb ourselves.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think I'm one of those. I think I'm one of those. And that's something that I've been working on. but it's but it is hard. But I think I'm getting better as I continue to practice those things. What could be some, let's say, for those kinds of people? I mean, I think we touched base a little bit earlier, but what is an effective way of just being? Like, how do you practice just being?
Well, put your phone far away and just sit. Try to just sit. It can be, for example, somewhere nice where you can have a nice view and just sit and be with your thoughts for a little bit. Like, just exist. I like to use the term that I'm existing right now because I'm just doing this. I'm not doing anything. And just be there for a little bit and progressively increase the time. It's very uncomfortable in the beginning, I warn.
Yeah. And I think sometimes just like understanding those concepts in a better way sort of helps. Like, for example, meditation. That's something that for a long time I thought I was doing, but I was guided through an app. And I didn't really notice like any difference. There was somebody in the speaker saying breathe 1, 2, 3, and then counting, and then all these things. But I didn't really feel like it changed something until I'm a huge fan of Naval Ravikant. I think that's his name. Well, I can send you the name in message, but he's got this great quote where he talks about that a, a busy mind can rob us of peace of mind, and that a lot of people are searching for peace of mind, but in reality, what we need is peace from mind. And that just completely blew me away. So he talks about his approach to meditation. I think I like that approach, and that's the one that I've been trying to what that I've been applying. I do see a difference. He kind of talks about, like you said, you put your phone away and you just are with yourself and with your thoughts. It says, yeah, it's very uncomfortable. But what I see as meditation is what I'm doing while I'm sitting with my thoughts, because I can't turn off my thoughts. It's just what I'm doing. I'm just reorganizing my thoughts and examining my thoughts and examining why am I thinking those things, and sort of coming down to the what are the things that are useful and what are the thoughts that are not being useful, and focus on those that are useful. Do you see that as a helpful practice?
Yes, I do meditate as well. And like on these apps, for example, and like there is a value in these apps,
Hmm.
not saying that, but for a lot of people, these apps, like do putting a guided meditation, is just doing another task. It's just like
Hmm.
check, check, and this is not the healthier approach because it's just another like thing that you're doing to be productive. You just you have this app, like like productive. I have been a few years ago in a silent meditation retreat. So I didn't go like this Vipassana. I didn't go the full 10 days. I went to a shorter one of 5 days, but it was enough for me to realize stuff. So no phones, no reading, no talking, no listen to music for 5 days. The first 2 days, it was a nightmare because I realized how loud my mind was. On the third day, I woke up and there was peace. I all the noise, it went away. And this for me was life changing. And after that, I've been meditating on a regular basis by just like, just being, just existing, just sometimes a bit focusing on my breathing just to come to the present moment, but just like thoughts come and go. And the same thing with body pains. When I was meditating in the retreat, I would have back pain, but it will go. Like, it will just come and go. So I do see the value in just this meditation of just being alone with your thoughts and without following instructions.
Yeah, and I think maybe that's the scary part for some, at least for me. Maybe when I started doing those practices, were just sitting down just with my thoughts, and I think sometimes maybe people can be a little bit overwhelmed by their own thoughts, right? And that's why we numb out.
Yes, and that's why you need I think everyone should learn the skill of not believing in everything you think because most
Yeah.
of it is trash.
Yeah. That is true. That is true.
And this is a skill that everyone can learn.
Yeah. Yeah, that is true. What could be one thing? There's two sides. One, the one where people get burnout, and there's the one side as well that perhaps perhaps people are not really meeting their full potential. What would be that one piece of advice that you would give to young people to find the true potential without burning out?
Going back, listen, learn to listen to your body and to what it's saying to you, like in terms of stress and pain and all of these things, so that you stop, you take a step back before you collapse, before it gets too late. And it's about getting to know yourself. Like, make sure that you are reaching after, like, climbing the right ladder. Because if you're climbing a wrong ladder, chances are you're going to burn out much easier, because and you might not being aware that you're climbing the wrong ladder. That's why you need to know yourself. You might only realize once you reach the top that it's like, oh, this is not what I want to do with my life. Get to know, like, yourself, who you are, what you want, what makes you feel purpose, what gives you a sense of purpose, and go after that instead of going after every like social media or your family definition of success. Find your own.
Mm. Dr. Leonor Carvalho, everybody. Leonor, where can people keep up with you?
LinkedIn, I is where my main communication, where I post, and in my website leanorcoaching.com.
Perfect. Leonor, thank you so much for being on the show today. It has been an absolute pleasure and definitely a lot of fun. Definitely have a lot of homework to take in after this session. So I really thank you so much. And I really hope that people can resonate with the work that you do and with the message that you're trying to, throw out there into the world.
Thank you so much for having me here. Thank you. It was a
Absolutely.
pleasure.
All right, then. Bye, everybody.